What is the best animated film of the 2010s? That's a question that everyone's going to answer differently. There were a lot of fantastic films that came out that decade. Ones that endured with their visuals, their stories, their characters, maybe even their songs. Films that have touched the hearts of audiences with stuff that spoke out to them, whether through their themes, their comedy, or even their drama. I think you can make a great case for any animated film being the best of the last decade. But for my money, there has always been one answer I've had for what the best animated film was in the 2010s ever since it first came out almost 10 years ago. And that film was Inside Out. There were a lot of films that decade that I really loved, but I don't think there was any other film that came out that spoke out to me like this one did. As I'm sure you all know, this film from Pixar is one of their very finest. It was directed by their best filmmaker, Pete Docter, and followed the emotions of a young girl named Riley and the turmoil that goes on in her mind when her family moves from suburban Minnesota to the hustle and bustle of San Francisco. And to sum it all up, this film is an absolute masterpiece. I adore Inside Out. This is Pixar operating at their very best and has some of the best creativity in filmmaking I have ever seen. It's a film that is practically perfect, with a story with a lot of great laughs and emotional moments, some of the most dazzling animation put to screen, and a cast of characters so well written and performed who all leave a memorable impression. Plus, it also has a beautiful score from Michael Giacchino, as well as some of the best world building I've ever seen in a film. The world of Riley's mind is one of the most tightly built and structurally sound worlds in a film, and has every piece just working in place flawlessly. This film is a huge culmination of everything I love in both films and animation. However, there's another major reason why I consider this film my personal favorite of the last decade, and that's because this is a film that I personally needed. When Inside Out came out, I had just finished middle school and was about to start high school, and to put it simply, I was incredibly depressed. My time in middle school had been the worst years in my life. I had been severely bullied and ostracized, I didn't have many friends, and I felt like a complete failure. It was a horrible period for me, and I really felt so trapped and alone with the struggles I had, and I felt like I couldn't really turn to anyone for help. And this film couldn't have come out at a more perfect time for me. Not just because that it was a very creative and dazzling film that entranced me, but also a film that showed me that it was okay to feel sad, that it's okay to tell people that you're not feeling happy. It was something that I needed to hear. And when that final scene came up where sadness took over Riley, I started to bawl. This is one of the few films out there that's made me cry, and there aren't that many. It really gave me so much comfort and helped me through the horrible depression that I was experiencing. And quite frankly, I don't know if I'd still be here without it. I know some might disagree with me, but personally, Inside Out really is the finest animated film of the last decade. It's not only one of my all-time favorite animated films, but one of my all-time favorite films, period. It really means that much to me. So naturally, when you make a film that good, it seemed inevitable that it would get a sequel. And in 2022, at D23, Pixar officially revealed it.
Main Street USA will be open an extra 2 hours for all D23.
Ladies and gentlemen, Pixar is making Inside Out 2!
And after almost a full decade, Riley's emotions journeys is continuing with Inside Out 2, the first Pixar sequel since Toy Story 4. And man, am I excited to talk about this one. Out of all the Pixar films that haven't gotten sequels yet, this is the one that made the most logical sense, and I was really intrigued to see what Pixar was making with the sequel, especially since it had new emotions, more wackiness, and more endeavors with growing up. Plus, Pixar is one of those animation studios that really knows how to make great sequels. I mean, I'm gonna go to bat for almost all of them. Almost. Oh my god. But yeah, alongside The Wild Robot, this film was easily my most anticipated animated film of the year. Naturally, when you make a sequel to one of my favorite films of all time, I'm going to be very curious to see how they would continue the story, though I keep my expectations in check since I don't want to get myself overhyped. So I went in seeing what they made, and I'm just going to say this right out of the gate. This is a phenomenal sequel. Guys, I'm just gonna say it. Inside Out 2 might be one of the best sequels Pixar has made. While that original film is basically untouchable and is in a class of its own, I can say this sequel comes pretty damn close to it, and it truly understood how to carry its legacy while expanding its impressive world. I really loved this sequel. A whole lot. When we last left our characters, Joy finally allowed sadness to take over, stopped Riley from running away, and was prepared to start her new life in San Francisco, alongside the console getting a new upgrade.
Guys, what's puberty? I don't know. It's probably not important.
Oh, so you think, Joy? But before we get to that, let's break down the basics. Riley, played now by Kensington Tallman, is now a year older and is still making it big as a hockey player with her emotions in control. Joy, played again by Amy Poehler, Sadness, played again by Phyllis Smith, Anger, played again by Lewis Black, Fear, played now by Tony Hale, and Disgust, played now by Liza Lapira. As Riley is about to start a new hockey camp, sure enough, that darn puberty alarm goes off, and the Mind Beans soon mess up headquarters and the console while saying that others are arriving. And by others, he means new emotions. Anxiety, played by Maya Hawke, Envy, played by Iowa Debris, Embarrassment, played by Paul Walter Hauser, and Ennui, played by Adele Exarchopoulos. Joy tries to work with the new emotions, but soon enough is hijacked when anxiety seemingly takes over and bottles up the new emotions to take over headquarters, and from there, they have to figure out how to get back to stop anxiety. And that's all I'm going to say about the plot, because there is a lot more going for it in this film, and I do not want to say any more since it would go into spoiler territory. But I'm going to do my best to talk about how phenomenal this sequel is, because it really deserves to have its flowers. Like I said, the original film is in a class in and of itself. In my eyes, it's a perfect film, and one that was probably going to be extremely difficult to top. But man, Pixar really did follow this up in a terrific way. One thing that I should point out is that the film's original director, Pete Docter, doesn't direct this sequel, as he's made it clear he's more invested in directing original films, and this sequel was instead directed by Kelsey Mann, who previously was a story supervisor on both Monsters University and Onward, and also did the MU short Party Central. And I can say he really is able to carry the torch passed on to him by Docter very well. One thing that this sequel does very well is knowing how to continue to expand the growth of Riley and the emotions, as well as showcasing more of the mind world. It doesn't feel like a repeat of the first film, but rather an extension, since it continues to juggle a lot more about what it means to be you and the struggles going on in the mind of teenagers. I know I've seen some people compare this film to Pixar's very own Turning Red, which also tackled themes about teenagers and puberty, but I do think it explores puberty in an interesting way that is very distinct compared to Turning Red, which also tackled similar ideas. Though Turning Red was a story that was rather about a daughter growing up and her mother realizing that she can't control her forever, whereas this is a story that focuses on what happens when teenagers get older and when anxiety enters the picture. But I mean that as a compliment. If anything, this feels like an interesting companion piece alongside Turning Red, and I think that both films are equally as excellent. I should also mention that this sequel definitely is a bit more frantic than the first film, but considering that this is a film that tackles the scariness of anxiety and the struggles with teenage growth, it's a welcome change of pace. Anxiety itself is a very rushed and panicky emotion, and it feels like a lot of thoughts are going by very quickly, and this film really truly shows that. It's a showcase on how to use that kind of fast pacing for a film compared to other animated films that have come out recently. And yeah, when I say the emotions are earned for this film, they are definitely earned. This sequel really looks at the themes and has moments I was not expecting to see, and much like the first film, I can say they got to me quite hard. Yeah, this one is a tearjerker, and I can say it's yet another film that did make me cry. Without spoiling, I'll just say that the ending was pure genius. Though it's not just a lot of emotions and themes that carries the film, I can also say this film is freaking hilarious. Now, this was something that I was not expecting out of this film, but this is probably one of the funniest films Pixar has made. There are so many good jokes in this film, and I was howling throughout the film, and the audience I was with was also loving it. One of the funniest jokes involves a character named Bluefy, who is a preschool cartoon character, and when he showed up and started acting the way he did, I was just laughing hysterically. They clearly did so much research on preschool shows and how ridiculous a lot of them are, and it was comedy gold. And speaking of him, I should also get to talking about the animation because, yeah, it's great. I mean, we expect great animation out of Pixar, and I can say this sequel certainly looks gorgeous. It's rendered beautifully, and they really added so much detail to the Mine world with the amazing sets and also fantastic character designs. The new emotions have hilarious designs, with Anxiety being the highlight, and the other characters the old emotions meet in the Mine are also very excellently designed. I mentioned Bluefy, but I also forgot to mention that he's traditionally animated exactly in low frame rate, just like for TV. And there's also another character they made who is a video game character named Lance Slashblade, and he looks exactly like a PS2 character, complete with pixelated images and awkward mouth movements. It was simply great. But then you have the characters. Let's talk about them. The way they develop the old emotions is so natural and nice, and I was especially impressed by the way they really made them grow. Joy continues to excel as an excellent protagonist, showing her good intentions while highlighting she's imperfect and not flawless. When she's out of headquarters with the other emotions, we really can see her struggle a lot here. Not just with anxiety, but also the complaining of the other emotions that she's had to deal with. She's such a humanized character, and one that you can really feel the pain and own frustration she has with what's going on. And I love that. However, one thing I was really surprised by was how much they grew the other emotions, mainly anger, disgust, and fear. In the first film, they were basically left on their own when joy and sadness got sucked out, and we mostly saw them cause a lot of damage and a lot of humorous bickering. Here, though, you can see them really get fleshed out and also try to really commit to helping Joy. One of my favorite moments that really stood out is when Anger comforts Joy after she's hit her limit, and it was a moment I loved. Knowing he was the one that did the most damage in the first film, seeing him be the one to comfort her and reassure her was fantastic writing. This is what great character development is like. As for the new emotions, I really think all of them are great characters. Anxiety is definitely the most interesting and commanding of the group, but one that is written so intelligently that her justifications feel understandable. It's very obvious Pixar really understood how to make this emotion work, and showcasing that while she has good intentions, she doesn't exactly know that she's gonna start to cause a lot of noticeable damage. It's also nice to see her being portrayed rather as an antagonist for the plot and not an overall villain. And it goes without saying that Maya Hawke is really good as her. I mean, she was a perfect choice knowing that her voice is very panicky and rushed, much like Anxiety herself. And the other emotions do have a lot of great moments to shine. Envy gets a lot of hilarious laughs with her over-the-top behavior. Embarrassment is also adorable, and he shared a good bond with Sadness. And Ennui also has a big laugh involving her being addicted to a smartphone that I won't spoil. So, yeah, I think it goes without saying that I really loved Inside Out 2. It has a story that is exceptionally deep and incredibly hilarious, animation that is very gorgeous and creative, and characters who continue to shine with personality and showcasing new scene stealers to boot. This is easily one of my favorite animated sequels in a long time, and it is one that is certainly most worth seeing. In fact, if you're going to see only one animated sequel that comes out this summer, it should be this. It's a firm demonstration on what great sequels are like and how great an animation studio Pixar is. And you know what? I think this one earns this grade. Inside Out 2 gets a 10. This really does live up to the legacy of that incredible first film. The first Inside Out is in a class of its own, as I established, but this sequel is one that really does come close to it and a showcase on how creative this franchise is. This really does have everything a great Pixar film should have. Great laughs, great animation, great characters, and of course, great emotions. Go see it if you haven't already.
Boy, are we so lucky we ran into you guys.
Wow, those guys are jerks.
Wow, those guys are jerks.